I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could only lie there in the darkness of my childhood bedroom. My body frozen like a corpse while my mind screamed for help. The tea my sister Lena had brought me, the first kind gesture she'd offered in years, had turned my muscles to stone. My fingers wouldn't twitch, my lungs barely pulled air. But my ears worked perfectly. That's how I heard her footsteps pause at my door. That's how I heard her whisper to someone in the hallway. "Just make it look natural." The door creaked open. "Stop scrolling for a second. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from right now, and be honest. Have you ever trusted a family member only to have them use it against you? I want to know I'm not the only one. Panic is a luxury. It's a waste of oxygen. And right now, my lungs were operating on a deficit. I forced my mind to detach from the screaming nerves in my limbs and focus on the data. I am a forensic accountant. I reconstruct financial crime scenes, from shredded receipts and deleted emails. This was just another crime scene. I was just the evidence. My eyes were fixed on the ceiling fan, a single blade slightly warped. I couldn't blink, so the tears pooling in my eyes blurred the edges of the room, but my mind was sharp, cold, calculating. How did I get here? The tea. "Chamomile," Brooke had said. "To help you sleep." It was the first time in 10 years my sister had handed me anything that wasn't a bill or a subpoena. I had taken it because I was exhausted. I had driven 6 hours through a blizzard to get to this lake house because my mother called, weeping, saying Dad was sick, saying they needed me. That was the first variable I should have flagged. They never needed me, they needed my utility. I replayed the last 48 hours, the way my mother, Patricia, wouldn't look me in the eye, the way my father, Kenneth, paced the living room, checking his watch. It felt like a stage play, where everyone knew their lines, except me. They weren't grieving a sickness. They were rehearsing a tragedy, and then I saw it. In my peripheral vision, on the nightstand next to the bed, 3 orange prescription bottles. They were empty. The caps were scattered on the polished wood. I don't take painkillers. I don't even take aspirin if I can help it. But there they were, planted like props in a cheap crime drama. Then I remembered the phone call I overheard earlier that afternoon. Brooke, whispering in the kitchen. I sent the texts from her phone. "Dad. It looks real. Everyone will think she's spiraling." The picture snapped into focus with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a murder. Murder is messy. Murder brings police investigations and autopsies. My father didn't want a dead daughter, he wanted a disqualified one. They were building a narrative. The overworked, unstable career woman. The secret addiction. The tragic overdose that didn't kill her but proved she couldn't take care of herself. If I was found like this, surrounded by pills, paralyzed, incoherent, it would be a one-way ticket to a conservatorship. My father, the disgraced real estate mogul who had burned through his own fortune, would be granted legal control over mine. My portfolio, my property, my signature. It was brilliant. It was evil. And it made perfect sense. You might wonder how I didn't see it coming. How a woman who uncovers corporate fraud for a living could walk into a trap set by people with the collective intelligence of a goldfish. But that's the thing about families like mine. We confuse familiarity with safety. There is a concept I see in fraud cases called the normalization of deviance. It's when people become so accustomed to cutting corners or unethical behavior that it becomes their baseline. You stop seeing the red flags because the red flags are the wallpaper. For 32 years, my paralysis wasn't physical, but it was just as real. It was the paralysis of waiting for a scrap of approval that never came. It was the freeze response of a child, learning that being invisible was the only way to avoid being a target. Tonight, the drug in my system had simply made my physical body match my reality. I had been frozen in this house my entire life. Silent, still, useful only when they needed to extract something from me. But the drug was wearing off. I could feel a prickle of fire in my fingertips. They thought they had neutralized me. They thought I was just a victim in their script. They forgot that auditors don't just read the books, we close them. The silhouette in the doorway didn't move like a predator. He moved like a professional. Heavy boots, measured steps, no wasted energy. He stopped beside the bed. I braced for the pillow over the face. the hands around the throat, the final, brutal, redaction of my life. Instead, he knelt. I felt the rough calluses of 2 fingers press against my carotid artery. It wasn't a stranglehold. It was a pulse check. He leaned in close. I smelled stale coffee and rain. "Still under," he muttered. It was a statement of fact, recorded for an internal log. He stood up and walked back to the doorway where Brooke was waiting, wringing her hands like Lady Macbeth in designer loungewear. "She's breathing," the man said. His voice was low, gravelly, but barely. "You said she was having a manic episode, Brooke. You didn't say she was comatose." "Does it matter?" Brooke hissed. "Just get the photos. Dad needs proof she's unfit." "I document liability," the man said, his tone sharpening. "I don't create it. If she dies tonight, that's a felony murder charge. I didn't sign up for a body disposal." He walked away. I heard his boots retreat down the hall, followed by the frantic click of Brooke's heels. He wasn't a hitman, he was a private investigator. My father had hired a third-party auditor to validate his fraud, but he'd hired one with a line he wouldn't cross. The door clicked shut. Silence rushed back in, but the equation had changed. They weren't going to kill me tonight, they were waiting for morning. They were waiting for the overdose to look convincing enough for the paramedics. I had hours. Maybe less. The drug began to recede, but it didn't leave quietly. It clawed its way out. The numbness in my legs replaced by a sensation that felt like boiling water pouring through my veins. The thaw was agonizing. My nerves were firing all at once, screaming at the return of sensation. I tried to sit up. My body screamed, but my mind was louder. Why was this so hard? Why, even now, with the evidence of their betrayal burning in my blood, did a part of me want to stay? There is a psychological phenomenon often found in long-term financial abuse cases. It's called the invisible chain of the survivor. It's the mechanism that keeps the competent child tethered to the incompetent parent. We aren't bound by love, we are bound by the terrifying necessity of our own utility. For years, I believed that if I just fixed one more crisis, if I just balanced one more ledger, I would finally earn my place at the table. I had convinced myself that my value lay in my ability to endure what they could not. I came back to this house because I thought I was the only one strong enough to save them. But that strength was the chain. They knew I would come. They banked on my competence. They leveraged my need to be the good daughter against me. Lying there, shivering as the circulation returned to my limbs, I realized the truth. My competence wasn't my shield. It was their weapon. If I stayed, I was validating their narrative. I was proving that I would rather die being useful than live being free. I closed my eyes and visualized the invisible ledger between us. The debts, the guilt, the years of service. I visualized a red stamp coming down on the page. Void. I rolled off the mattress. My knees hit the floor with a thud that echoed in the silent room. Pain shot up my spine, white-hot and clarifying. I gritted my teeth, forcing air into my lungs. I grabbed the edge of the nightstand and pulled myself up. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a liability. And liabilities have a way of disappearing off the balance sheet. The glass door slid open with a sound like a blade on ice. The wind hit me instantly. A physical blow that nearly knocked me back onto the carpet. It was 30 degrees below zero with the wind chill. Good. The cold was a shock to the system, a hard reset for my drug-addled nerves. I stepped out into the snow. I wasn't wearing boots. Just the thick wool socks I'd been sleeping in. The cold bit through the fabric in seconds, turning my feet into blocks of ice. But pain was just data. Pain meant I was alive. Pain meant I was moving. I stumbled toward the boathouse. The snow was knee-deep, drifting against the siding of the main house. Visibility was zero. The world was a white void. If I could get to the main road, I could flag down a plow or a truck. It was a statistical long shot, but the probability of survival inside the house was zero. A figure emerged from the whiteout. I froze. My body was ready to fight, but my muscles were still lagging behind my brain. It was the man. The private investigator. He was leaning against a dark SUV parked near the tree line, the engine idling, exhaust pluming into the gray air. He didn't grab me. He didn't shout for my father. He just opened the passenger door. "Get in," he said. His voice was flat, carrying over the wind. "Unless you plan on freezing to death, to prove a point." I calculated the odds. If he wanted me dead, he could have finished the job in the bedroom. If he wanted me institutionalized, he would have called Brooke. He was offering an alternative variable. I climbed in. The heat was blasting. The sudden warmth made my skin scream, 1,000 needles piercing my extremities. I huddled against the door, watching him as he got into the driver's seat. He didn't look at me. He put the car in gear and drove us away from the house, the tires crunching over the packed ice. "Why?" I asked. My voice was a croak. "Because I checked your background," he said, "before I took the job. Kenneth told me you were a liability. Unstable. Reckless. But I pulled your records. Clean credit. Top of your class. Forensic certifications that take 10 years to get. Addicts don't maintain a security clearance, Jasmine. You're a PI, I said. You work for the client. You don't vet the target." He glanced at me then. His eyes were hard. Tired. "I'm not a PI. Not really. I was a detective in the fraud division for 6 years before I turned in my badge." He reached into the center console and tossed a file onto my lap. I opened it. It wasn't a dossier on me. It was a dossier on my father. "Kenneth didn't hire me because I'm good," Patrick said. "He hired me because I'm cheap and I keep my mouth shut, or so he thinks." I flipped through the pages. It was a timeline of a real estate development in 2008. The Lakeside View Project. It was a Ponzi scheme wrapped in luxury branding. Investors lost millions. Kenneth walked away with a golden parachute while the shell company took the fall. "My father was one of the investors," Patrick said. The professional detachment in his voice cracked, just for a second. He didn't just lose his retirement. He lost his home. He lost his mind trying to figure out how a man could smile at him, shake his hand, and steal his life. I looked at him. The stranger wasn't a random variable. He was a consequence. My father's past crimes had finally caught up to him, manifesting in the form of the man he hired to bury his daughter. "I've been tracking him for 3 years, Patrick said. I needed to get inside the house. I needed access to his physical files. I thought taking this job would get me close enough to find the ledger." He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I didn't know he was going to sacrifice his own kid to cover his tracks. "I have a line." He crossed it. "I know where it is," I said. He looked at me. "What?" "The ledger," I said. "The physical proof. The trail of shell companies. The stolen inheritance. I know where he keeps it." Patrick hit the brakes, the SUV skidding slightly on the ice before coming to a halt on the shoulder of the empty road. "You're sure?" "I'm an auditor," I said. "I don't guess." "Then we have a problem," he said. "Because if it's in that house, we can't go back." "Not tonight." "It's not in the house," I said. "It's in the car." I reached into the back seat and pulled over the item I had grabbed in my panic. It wasn't a bag of clothes. It wasn't my laptop. It was an old, battered violin case. The diner was a fluorescent scar against the dark highway, smelling of grease and burnt coffee. We took a booth in the back, away from the windows. Patrick ordered black coffee. I ordered water. I needed clarity, not caffeine. I placed the violin case on the formica table. It was scuffed, the leather peeling at the corners. To my mother, Patricia, this case was an eyesore. She had tried to throw it out 3 times. "It smells like mildew," she'd say. "It's garbage." But that was the flaw in my family's assessment of value. They only valued what shined. They never understood that the most valuable assets are often the ones buried in the fine print. "You grabbed a fiddle?" Patrick asked, eyeing the case. "We're on the run from a man who framed you for a felony, and you saved a musical instrument?" "It's not an instrument," I said. "It's a safe deposit box." I popped the rusty latches. The hinges groaned. Inside, the violin was gone. My grandmother, Eleanor, hadn't played in years before she died. But she was a woman who understood survival. She knew her son, Kenneth. She knew he was a man who consumed everything he touched: money, people, trust. My grandmother gave me this before she passed, I told Patrick. She told me, Jasmine, when the house of cards falls, look for the music. My father thought she was senile. I knew she was speaking in code. I dug my fingernails into the velvet lining of the case bottom. It was glued tight, but age had made the adhesive brittle. I pulled. The fabric tore with a satisfying rip. Underneath the velvet wasn't wood. It was paper. Stacks of it. Yellowed envelopes. A leather-bound notebook. And a thick document with a blue legal cover. Patrick leaned in, his detective instincts taking over. Is that what I think it is? I pulled out the blue document first. This is her last will and testament, I said, flipping to the final page. The real one. Not the one my father probated 15 years ago. I scanned the figures. She didn't leave the estate to Kenneth. She left it to me. In a trust, $1.2 million. He forged a new will, Patrick said. That's probate fraud. That's 20 years, easy. That's the appetizer, I said. I picked up the leather notebook. This was the main course. I opened it. It wasn't a diary, it was a ledger. Handwriting, cramped and meticulous, filled every page. Dates, amounts, names. Lakeside View, I read. November 2008, transfer to Shell Corp Alpha. 200,000. I turned the page. March 2009, investor buy-in, transfer to offshore holding. I looked up at Patrick. His face was pale. He didn't just steal my inheritance, he documented his entire Ponzi scheme. My grandmother was his bookkeeper in the early days. She kept a shadow ledger. She knew, Patrick whispered, she knew he was robbing us. She knew he would destroy anyone who tried to stop him, I said. So she turned me into the failsafe. She knew I would become an accountant. She knew I would be the only one who could read this. I ran my finger down the column of numbers. It was all there, the stolen pensions, the fake construction costs, the bribes. It was a forensic roadmap to my father's destruction. This is the smoking gun, Patrick said. With this, we don't just stop the conservatorship, we bury him. I closed the notebook. The fear that had been vibrating in my chest since I woke up paralyzed was gone. It was replaced by the cold hum of a machine coming online. We have 4 hours until the court hearing, I said. I need a laptop, a scanner, and a very strong cup of coffee. What are you going to do? I looked at him. I'm going to conduct an audit. The courtroom smelled like floor wax and anxiety. I watched from the back as my family took their places. Kenneth, in a suit that cost more than my car, looked the picture of the grieving father. Patricia was weeping into a handkerchief, a performance worthy of an Oscar. Brooke sat beside them, scrolling on her phone, looking bored. They had brought props. On the table in front of their lawyer lay the empty pill bottles. A stack of printed text messages, fabricated conversations, where I begged for money to buy drugs. The judge, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked sympathetic. We are here for an emergency ex parte conservatorship hearing regarding Jasmine, she said. Counsel, proceed. Kenneth's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this is a tragedy. My clients are simply trying to save their daughter's life. She is a danger to herself. The overdose last night was a cry for help. We have the medical records? The judge asked. We have photographs of the scene, the lawyer said. And witness testimony from her sister, who found her. Kenneth nodded solemnly. I just want her safe, Your Honor. She's not herself. It was a masterclass in manipulation. If I hadn't been the target, I would have applauded. Is the respondent present? The judge asked. We believe she is currently incapacitated, the lawyer said smoothly. We haven't been able to locate her since she wandered off from the family home last night in a state of delirium. Not delirium, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. Hypothermia. Induced by a chemically forced lockout. Every head turned. I walked down the center aisle. I wasn't wearing a hospital gown or looking like a recovering addict. I was wearing a tailored black suit I kept in my trunk for client meetings. My hair was pulled back. My spine was steel. Patrick walked a step behind me, carrying a banker's box. I am Jasmine, I said, stopping at the respondent's table. and I object to this entire proceeding on the grounds of fraud, perjury, and attempted murder." Kenneth's face went from tragic to terrified in a split second. Brooke dropped her phone. "Your Honor," Kenneth's lawyer sputtered. "This woman is clearly unstable." The outbursts. "I have a toxicology report," I said, handing a document to the bailiff. "Run this morning at 8 o'clock. It shows 0 narcotics in my system. What it does show is a high concentration of benzodiazepines, a sedative I have never been prescribed, but which my sister Brooke picked up from a pharmacy 3 days ago. I have the receipt. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I presented the data. Exhibit B," I continued, motioning to Patrick, who handed the judge a thick file. "A forensic audit of my father's finances. It shows that the money for drugs I allegedly begged for was actually a series of wire transfers from my trust fund. A fund I didn't know existed until 4 hours ago, into a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands, under my father's name." The judge was reading now, flipping pages rapidly. Her sympathy was evaporating, replaced by the cold, hard look of the law. "And finally," I said, placing the leather ledger on the judge's bench. "This. The original accounting of the Lakeside View project. Proof that my father has been running a Ponzi scheme for 15 years. He didn't want a conservatorship to save me. He wanted it to silence me. Because as a forensic accountant, I am the only person who could decipher this." Kenneth stood up. "This is lies. She's hysterical. That book is—" "Sit down, Mr. Kenneth," the judge snapped. "Now." I turned to look at my father. He was sweating. The gray pallor of ruin was spreading across his face. "You hired an investigator to find dirt on me," I said to him. "You should have checked his background first. You hired the son of the man you destroyed in 2008. Patrick stepped forward. "Detective Patrick O'Malley, Your Honor, formerly of the Fraud Division. I can authenticate these documents. And I can testify to the attempted poisoning I witnessed last night." The courtroom went silent. It was the silence of a vacuum, of air being sucked out of a room before an explosion. "Bailiff," the judge said, her voice icy, "take Mr. Kenneth into custody. I am referring this matter to the district attorney immediately." "No!" Patricia screamed. "You can't do this. We're a respectable family." "You're a criminal enterprise," I said. "And the audit is closed." The bailiffs moved in. Kenneth didn't resist. He looked deflated, a man who had built a kingdom on quicksand and was finally sinking. Patricia was sobbing, clinging to Brooke, who looked around the courtroom as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. I didn't stay to watch them be processed. I didn't need to see the handcuffs click. The satisfaction wasn't in their punishment, it was in my vindication. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright, blinding sunlight. Patrick was waiting by the steps. "It's done," he said. "It's done," I agreed. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was absolute. The assets were frozen, then seized. The lake house, the cars, the accounts, everything was liquidated to pay back the victims of the Ponzi scheme. Patricia and Brooke were left with nothing. No trust funds, no safety nets, no skills to navigate a world that required them to earn their keep. I recovered my inheritance, all of it, plus interest, but I didn't keep it. Money that comes from poison always carries a taste. Instead, I used it to buy a small office building downtown. I put a new sign on the door. The Eleanor Foundation. We provide forensic accounting services for victims of financial abuse. We help spouses track hidden assets in divorces. We help elderly parents prove their children are stealing from them. We help people who have been told they are crazy, incompetent, or paranoid prove that they are right. I sit at my desk now, looking out over the city. My phone buzzes. It's a text from my mother. "Please, Jasmine. We have nowhere to go. Just for a few weeks." I don't delete it. I archive it. Evidence. I pick up a pen and write a note on a piece of stationery. It's a letter I've been writing in my head for 32 years. To the ones who always feel like they're on the edge of the family photo. You are not the problem. You are the solution they are terrified of. You are the only one who sees the cracks in the foundation because you are the one holding it up. Let it fall. Build your own house. And don't give anyone a key unless they earn it. I fold the letter and place it in the drawer. I am Jasmine, I am an auditor. And my books are finally balanced. If you've ever had to be the villain in their story, just to survive in yours, share this video. Let's remind every silent witness that their voice matters.